Welcome to another episode of ShrinkTank, brought to you by the Dynasty Self-Help Podcast. Join us while Jeremy and Richard help Kyle self-actualize in a complicated multi-copy IDP league, Shark Tank 2. All right, we're going to kick off Shark Tank Diary number 6, guys. This, I believe, was titled on my end something along the lines of days 6 through 15 in the auction. So this will be some times where I was super busy and probably lamenting like Dante. And I walk away with Byron Jones. That's my team. Let's take a look at how that's looking. There's that email that I was saying. So
I missed this.
I go into the second day email. Kick it back. Okay, so days 1 through 5 are done, and I walk away with Byron Jones. That's my team. Let's take a look at how that's looking. There's that email that I was saying. So. All right, maybe I can go into the second day email. Okay, this is just a waiver announcement. People are starting to trade. Okay, who cares? That guy's got a trade guy on the block. I don't really care. Day 2 nominations, trade block. I'm like, man, these guys are trade blocking everything. Okay, we got your nominations. I didn't start saving those emails, all of those emails, for a while. I was deleting the waiver reports because they were.
I feel like we're going to see some good coupon codes in here at some point. So stay tuned, everybody.
That or something worse.
In this league, they happen to be very impactful. So what happens on the 28th, I win Byron Jones. Woohoo! Well, then I have another gap in here where I'm just not paying attention, and people are winning. A lot of my favorite guys are now gone. And I get an offer from
Did you realize he's no longer a Cowboy?
I knew that it was a potential situation. I think at that time, he may have already signed the contract over there, but I knew one way or another he was either going to be signing a contract somewhere or signing a contract, for the Cowboys. Little did I know about IDP at the time. Good corners in the primes of their career are often the worst players to pick up at that position. So
don't get targeted.
Here, hey, dude, he had spent everything. Right, as it were, he had gone out and blown his wad, and it was over. He had no money left, and we're like a week into this, and he made me an offer for 2 of my favorite players this coming year, and what I think are steals in Joe Mixon and Chris Godwin, and he offered me them for like $585, which was what he paid for them, and I'm realizing, okay, at this point, money value is decreasing, right? So money value itself is increasing, player value is decreasing because people are spending so much money. All right, I gotta get in here and get some players, right? I better lock some guys down, but I can do it cheaper than that. And so I basically offered him
So at this point, it seemed like you were kind of turning into the banker.
Yeah, there was some truth to that. Like I had all the money, so I was getting more offers I think than probably most people because they're like, oh, this guy doesn't have any players. He's got all the money. I bought this guy. Will you pay what I paid for him? Right. That was kind of a trend that was already happening a week and a half into Shark Tank 2. But I started to go, is he worth what you paid for him 3 days ago? Because we're spending money at a rabid pace. So I don't know if he's worth that.
Well, it puts you in that position of power, it seems, where people can have buyer's remorse, or they're just desperate, or they're trying to make maybe some sort of profit. Not that the money matters, that much. I think maybe it carries forward a little bit, or is it only for the startup? Refresh me on that.
This is a bankroll league, so these dollars are dollars forever. If you don't spend it, you can use it at any point in time. And there are Devi auctions and rookie auctions. So
so probably more so of the buyer's remorse than trying to, get back what they paid, at least.
And this is blind bid, right? So you have no idea which ones you're going to win. You might win 10 and you go, uh-oh, that's my whole budget. What am I doing? And so I think that was happening a lot at the beginning. They're expecting to bid on 10. They're going to get 1 or 2, but they get 10. Whoops.
Right. So did that, kind of transitioning to this position where you had a lot of the money left and people were seeking you out, what was your kind of internal reaction or internal experience when you started to realize that's kind of what was happening?
It was helpful for me. It was cathartic, and because um, I was really down on myself for missing so many of these auctions and not putting the effort in, and then realizing I'm not done. Like, I can buy these players. Heck, I might be able to buy them for cheaper. Like, literally might be able to buy these guys for pennies on the dollar if I just wait a few weeks. Like, it was an accidental luck into a strategy that I wasn't intending to use. The equivalent of like $50 less than what the two lowest copies went for, and he came back with, "Hey, this is what I paid minus a little bit, or maybe no, this is what I paid for him." He said, and I said, "Okay, that's fair enough." So basically, he's breaking even. Not necessarily a smart move on my part. I still think this is probably one of my worst moves per se, but I still love the fact that I've got Joe Mixon and Chris Godwin on my team. I think that as far as the actual construction,
That's interesting because, it seemed like reflectively looking back on this, it seemed like, you can maybe reflectively wanted to negotiate the price, but it sounded like you were speaking more positively of it just now, and then in the moment diary, you were not as happy that you kind of pulled the trigger on that.
yeah, I think it was exactly right. I was happy with it until I really did the money research that we just talked about, and I went, oh, if I'd have waited 3 days, I probably could have gotten that, but I might not have gotten the player because he might have been shopping him to 10 other players, 15 other teams. Like, there's other teams that have money, not just me. So there
Yeah.
is that little you better move fast type immediacy that occurs in there. And I've had it happen in this league. Sometimes you're like, oh, let
Mhm.
me mull that over. Oh, that guy accepted the trade from the same player I had. Guess I don't get to mull it over anymore.
Right. Well, and it's kind of that awareness that happens is fairly gradual. There might be a bump in it at times where it's like, oh, wow, like this is happening, but you still don't fully comprehend what is, what the advantages of it are, what the disadvantages are, what the time scale of it is. And, that's a therapeutic kind of you know, process as well, where awareness increases of difficulties or things you could be doing, alternative strategies, coping strategies, linking things like your distress to your thoughts. And that happens more gradually. And when you look back on things, you can say, oh, well, I wish I would have, done that a little bit differently 3 days ago because I see it differently now.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the process. It's a kind of stepped or tiered process.
Well, and so I caught up probably, I think it was like about 2 or 3 weeks of these diaries all at once. I had the idea, to chart my pain a little bit late into the game, but I still had the memories fresh enough to where I could talk about them. So some of these are recorded, like I did days 6 through 15. So of course I'm not recording it on day six. So I already had a little bit of ability to reflect on that. I'm wondering if like along the lines of what you were saying, if I'd have recorded that day, I'd have probably just been elated. Ah, look at what I got. Like, I had a little time to think about it and go, I probably overspent.
Yeah, I mean, you were interested enough to say yes to the offer, so that's one clue of it. But yeah, I think you're right that um, having a little bit more momentary reaction to it would have been um, even more insightful to this tracking process.
I'm telling you, I was pretty excited when that offer came through. So, like, I remember it
Do you
pretty
get more of a
clearly.
gambly feel from this kind of format? Is it is it more
I
risky
mean, I
feeling, or
never,
is it?
it's kind of like poker to me, playing fantasy football. Like, if I can play for $1 and everybody's in and motivated for that dollar, that's fine. The only thing I'd play fantasy football for is, the like I like the hobby of it. I mean, I can make some money because I'm generally decent at it, but that if I was playing in the high stakes leagues, I don't know if I would enjoy it as much. Like, I just like to put enough skin in the game to where everybody else cares, so I'm not winning something against people who don't care. Of winning in this league, I think that they're going to be helpful for that. Well, then we come into another week of craziness, and I'm unable to get to anything. I believe I did manage to get some to put some roster claims in. I did on the 28th put in a bunch of different players. I did not again successfully put my bids in until March 7th. So these first 2 weeks were tough for me. These first 2 weeks were just not good. And I was really unhappy with how that was working out. And I was kind of getting a little bit depressed on it because I was excited about this league at the beginning. And I'd lost some of that luster by the time I was, really working in this thing and figuring out, okay, I put the time in. I'm starting to look at some of these rules. I'm starting to get an understanding. I've now gone over the offense. I get how the offense works. Okay, I need certain players on offense, so I wanted to do those things at the beginning. Well, now between then and now, I spent Saturday morning and I figured out on March 7th. Okay, I've actually now run my information. I know what I need. I don't necessarily know all my players, but I know what I need. And let's go back to these rules that are in here and see what I have figured out at this point. Let's scroll back down here to the starters. This is the one thing I really started to highlight. Okay, I have the option to flex pretty much anybody at offense, but I am very, very position centric when it comes to the Shark Tank defenses. So I know I've got to start 1 defensive tackle, 2 defensive ends, 3 linebackers, 2 corners, and 2 safeties. So positions like D tackle, where I know that there's struggle to find them. Do you want a 1 technique or a 5 technique or 3 tech? Which ones of these guys are going to get sent over to a 4-3 and instead of being a defensive tackle or maybe they're sent from a 4-3 to a 3-4, and so now they're, instead of a defensive tackle, they're a defensive end. And I worry at some of these positions, oh my gosh, there's probably not a lot of really good defensive tackles, especially some of the young ones, so I better target some of these guys. And then I still don't really have an idea of the economy that's going on here. Players are still going for more than they should, but I'm just trying to secure. My thought at this point is I need an anchor at each of these positions. You got to have, if Mike might be muted there, Jeremy.
It was.
Okay.
This is my first podcast. Yeah, you said one thing in there, that a phrase that I think is interesting to just elaborate on a little bit more. You said players were still going for more than they should. Tell me a little bit about how you come to that conclusion.
Just the sheer math of economy. I know how many players, I've done the math, how many of these players are going to end up getting drafted, and how many of these players are going to be players on actual football teams that will record points. And given that this league has 64 copies, 5 copies, it has 64 players on a team, and then additional taxi squads, and you basically end up rostering around 80 people. And by the time you multiply that by 70, even though there's 5 copies, there's just not a lot of actual relevant players left when you subtract out the offensive line and such.
Is there any weighting that goes into play based on when those players are selected? So is a player worth the same throughout that auction process, or does that change at all when there's less money or there's less players or there's position scarcity, things like that?
I think that you'll see that in some of these futures. It wildly varies. And when you watch, I believe I talk about a trade that Peter Gant makes later on, and there were a couple people making these trades when they all realized that there were still tons of players left on the board and there was no money left. All of a sudden, people are trading guys that they spent $400 for. They're trading up for $100, taking 25 cents on the dollar just to get back into the game to fill their rosters. So, there is definitely a realization. I think I picked it up early, maybe not the earliest. I think there were definitely people who figured it out before I did. But I think I picked it up early enough to know not to just go hot and heavy with the strategy I had used. If I saved some money, there was going to be some really positive times, and that was kind
Yeah,
of
it
the
seems
strategy
like
I switched to.
that's kind of a common one that you've described where someone, essentially paid too much for a player and then is trying to buy back some money to fill other spots. Um, we haven't heard a lot about yet. I mean, it may happen toward the end of this draft, but um, people trying to capitalize and looking back, somebody got someone for $25, but now someone would pay $70 for him. Um, and that may happen after the draft, as the bankroll continues or something like that. But I think that's the other side of the coin that's interesting to consider with these changing values of players.
It's pretty crazy economy that it builds, and with the only one waiver run being done every day, that blind bid adds, like, you don't see a scrolling ticker like we're doing the Shark Tank 3, and it's an auction that's just rolling, and then we're doing Shark Tank 1 dispersal, and that's an auction that just continues to roll. Oh my goodness, like, you're seeing the values climb and who people are willing to take a big stab at, who they're not. When it's blind bid, every day is like a total reassessment of the economy, and there's 70 people bidding on 10 players, 14 players, 20, the number of players can vary, and it is wild. Like, every day feels like I have to reevaluate what a dollar is worth.
If you got this one QB and one running back and one wide receiver, let's go ahead and get that guy, right? That's what I'm looking for. Let's get that guy. And then I'll fill in with some depth at the end. It's not necessarily stars or scrubs. It's not, we're only looking at the best players and the best players only. Um, I'm looking for a quality player or two at each position, and then I'm going to backfill. I got a 65-man roster plus rookies. I'm going to backfill with a bunch of guys that could possibly become rotation players for me or something along those lines. So that's where I had gotten to with my thought process. Now I got to start getting some guys, but I still didn't quite understand. I knew some stuff was going on there in San Francisco, and Solomon Thomas might be a good player for me. I really liked him coming out of the draft. Solomon Thomas, awesome football player, but he kind of sat behind DeForest Buckner, and that line is so good. Turns out I think that's a good thing for me that I have him, because I think basically he's going to go into the role that Buckner is leaving there in San Francisco.
I was wrong.
But again, I'm still not quite sure what's going on. Like, I see a Dory Jackson on here. He seemed to be a high point scorer. I know he's a high pedigree draft guy, so I'm going after him. I know I saw this Mike Rowe had scored some okay points, and I didn't realize at the time that he was going to convert to safety, but that turns out to be a steal, especially at that point in the draft, for $5 to get a safety, because safety scarcity, when you think about how many cornerbacks are on a team, there's usually somewhere between 3 and 4. If most teams are playing base nickel, 3 corners, but they're not all playing base nickel single high safety. Some of them are playing base nickel 2 high safety, but in the end, you're limited. Maybe not everybody's playing 2 safeties on the field at any given time. There's 70 teams. You all got to start 2 safeties. Yeah, there's 5 copies, but it's not a lot of room to wiggle. So getting safeties, I've found, is something that is going to be impactful. So linebackers I know are big, safeties are big. So here we are. I've now gotten in here and I started to do some stuff, right? I saw that some players went that I had gone for. I had actually started a bid here. I'm putting stuff out. I'm really bummed. I like both of those linebackers coming out last year, Devin Bush and Devin White. I prefer Devin White. Like, I think that he's just a phenomenal football player in a great situation. And I was like, okay, quarterbacks are cleaned out at this point. All true starters are gone. I said, okay, I need to go start getting some of these things. And I said, what's a good way for me to get these players when I still miss? And I just started thinking about it, and I said, okay, well, there's 5 copies that are going. So these guys somebody got the guy at way overspending. Maybe somebody spent $100 on a guy and somebody spent $50 on the last copy. Like this blind bidding system, I'll need to do a whole a whole diary entry on just that. The fact that you don't know who's going to bid what prior to, and there is no way to figure out what value is, what pricing is. Like you just can't know. You have no clue. So looking through this stuff, I'm going, all right, I have no clue who's going to do what and who's going to be where, but I can see what happened after the fact. So I see these folks that have actually bid on these people. Okay, cool. Now they bid on them. They are in existence. These are the numbers. I do know what these 5 player copies went for. So what if I go offer some of these guys that I like the guys, and I go, okay, well, the top guy sold or bought for 100, the bottom guy bought for 80, and I'll go offer the bottom guy who bought for 80 the 100, right? And so like, okay, maybe you didn't want that guy that much, but you realize that, you know, you can give back that money and actually make $20 on your guy. If you didn't like him all that much, but you got him, then that seemed like a pretty fair way for me to get some guys. So you can see I was able to make this trade over here with Dwight Peeble, the FF People's Champ. I've listened to him on Debbie Happy Hour for a while. He's doing something different now. Good dude. And then I was able to make this trade as well and get Nick Foles. So my goal there was, man, I got nobody at QB. I got to have a starter, and we're real limited at this point. So the next few days I was going to make a push for these starters at QB. But I got Foles and Minshew, so I was like, okay, I got at least one starter out of those two, because there's going to be a battle there in Jacksonville for the starting position. Little did I know that Foles would be traded, and then I potentially have 2 starters out of that mix, which for that price is actually pretty good. Overpaid for Devin White, but Devin White I feel like is a top 10 linebacker, and especially in this scoring system.
And that will pan out to be true. So I was right on that one. Dead ass wrong on Solomon Thomas, but yeah, as far as the Devin White situation goes, I got in. That's actually cheap. Like you wouldn't be able to buy him for anywhere near that. He's going to be going for twice, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times as much, especially after that Super Bowl game.
So there we are. We're now through day 10. Let's call it. Let's look through 5 days at a time. So we're through these 5 days. Lost a chance at J.J. Watt and Chubb, and okay, Cortland Sutton is gone, the football player man out of SMU, and Chris Godwin. I was, like I said, I was a little disappointed I missed some of these players, but I was able to get them later. There's some other targets in these areas that I see that I'm going to probably reach out for in the neighborhood of the near future. But you can even see after 10 days of nominations, like some of these guys that are on here, AJ Green, meh, Johnny Smith, meh. There's some guys on here that don't just rattle your socks off or anything, right? So, okay, we're done. Days 6.
Speak for yourself on Johnny Smith.
And this was the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, and then the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. I actually got us into here. So let's see what happens. Then we get 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. I think that's basically.
I want to follow up on that, and I'd like to ask a scientific question about how you quantify rattling your socks off.
You put like rocks inside your socks, like so that they get all the way to the toes, and then when you're excited, you're going to be jittery, and your socks will fall off. That's typically what I do to know if I'm excited or not.
That's
Rocks
the accepted method.
Socks. Right, rocks and socks, the toe to jittery method. Gotcha. Thank you.
Right. If my math's right, if there were 28 days in February, but this was a leap year, wasn't it? Yeah, so I'm off a day anyway. So we're pretty close. Wednesday, March 11th. Now you're seeing I'm starting to get some players one at a time. Got Chris Carson. I really like in this kind of a format. Some of these guys are going for 200 for a starting running back. If I can do my standard thing where I get Chris Carson and Penny. Get Penny later. Wait till he's cheap. Nobody's going after him. And then I got a potential for lockdown guy in a format and a team where they really like to run the ball. So I mean it's a risk that that I'm going for two guys instead of one, and hopefully one will pan out. But I got really deep benches, so to me that makes sense. Go after Cameron Jordan, older but a stud at the position. Ben Roethlisberger, I got him for what I felt like was a really good deal. Now I'm starting to fill in. Okay, got myself Noah Fant. Joseph Linval, I knew that was a stud at defensive tackle. I really feel like the scoring system for this league, if you've got a defensive tackle who gets some points, you're bounded for some greatness, because they don't need but 30 or 40 tackles, and they'll score the same amount of points as everybody else. At this
Must
point,
be the cousin of Linval Joseph.
I have finished my spreadsheet.
I know.
I've got my rankings, my tiers. I understand what I'm looking for. Now I got to figure out this economy. How do I get some of these guys that I want? And let's move on from there.
Did you hear me call Eric Rowe Mike Rowe earlier too?
Yeah.
You didn't call me that. You didn't call me out on that one.
That'd be a great team.
It would be.
That guy knows how to get stuff done.
Yeah, he'd just go in there and do everybody's job. That's the problem. Like, you're supposed to be a safety quarterback.
Can't have a guy like that on your roster.
No, he's too selfish. All right, well, so that's the diary as it's done there. Now you're really getting a sense of, all right, I've gotten through this. That's a few weeks of this craziness. I'm getting some players. You can look at that list. I mean, I got some pretty good ones on there with Max Crosby and Dallas Goedert and Noah Fant. I started to go, okay, well, now people have overspent at these big positions. So maybe if I spend a little high on the second level positions, I can start to get some better deals. So I did spend, that wasn't too much money. $100 and $78 for Goddard and Noah Fant was a pretty good deal given the scoring system. But that's the diary.
I'm curious as to the, again, this is in reflection, but you talked about how you were feeling kind of excited, taking on this banker role with a lot of the money, and then what that was like compared to then, attaching names instead of some of that money once you started to fill out some of the roster.
It's such an arduous task to build a roster where you have 22 starters. So when do you start getting excited, right? At 10, at 20? You see, some of these people were literally spending all of their money on 9 people, and they were saving about $50 or $60 to go buy $1 players to fill in the rest of their roster, or pennies, because at the time when you're done, you're literally spending pennies. You can see that it's decimal for the money there.
Well, there's only 5 Rashad pennies.
That's true, but there are many, many pennies to spendy. So we had, though, I mean, like I said,
as the old saying goes.
There's Elijah Penny.
It's true.
Penny Hardaway, if you're playing NBA Jam.
Pays to be Pennywise.
Yeah, and people are paying us a penny for our thoughts.
Are they?
No.
Not
I'm billing
yet.
them. I'm billing them. It costs like 10 cents to bill them, but I'm billing them a penny. But yeah, I mean, you saw some names on there. I mean, some of the people that I like and some of the people I don't. And getting Corey Davis for 35, I felt like it was a pretty good deal in there. And I mean, when you got star wide receivers going for 300, that's getting a $35 player that is a really strong top 36 wide receiver. You get some value there. And the question to me is, are you top heavy enough to win the league or score? See all that as the diaries kind of pan out.
Recording. All right.
One second.
Ready for an exciting Saturday edition. With or without you, Jeremy.
I'm coming. Hold on. Pat just responded in the because I sent out some of these assignments because some of the guys wanted to work on them today, and he said, "Sounds good. Can you explain what you need us to do? Like I'm 5 years old. Sorry."
Excellent. I'm in 1000%. Also, what? Appreciate your.
I'll do anything you need, one step at a time.
Yeah.
All right, breathe in. Okay, now I'm going to try to explain as much as I can before I breathe out. Okay, breathe back in. That feels like work.
It does. Yeah.